You know, they're selling you all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
I back. Trust me, I back.
But I'm not impressed by your performance.
You'll do nothing. You'll do nothing. Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing. You'll do fucking nothing. Not one of you'll do nothing.
I'll tell you what, bro. I was out there, I was fighting all the hitters, bro. You ain't fought no hitters.
Come on, guys. Normal.
I'm not saying I would fight you. I would kill you.
John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really?
No, don't be scared, homie.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the fuck he wants.
I am gonna beat you into the living death. I mean, maybe that's your job, but where I come from, you know, people like that get slapped.
That's fucking illegal.
Nick Diaz, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Yeah, this is a simulated death match. And you haven't simulated anybody's death yet.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
What is the game plan going in against him?
The game plan is you go in there, hit him with some good shit, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Do you want to be a fighter? That is my question.
Any of you radio personalities think you want smoke? Call me Mr. Chimney. I want smoke.
Yes. What is up, MCR family? Another daily edition of the show. Actually, two shows today. One early today with Rob, breaking down all the boxing topics, and one right now live on YouTube podcast from iTunes, Spotify, radio, etc., breaking down all things MMA and previewing UFC 243, Robert Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya, going down in Melbourne, Australia. Oh, come on. Can we just get like air horns? This fight is chef's kiss gif from Simpsons. It is that good, okay? It is perhaps one of the best fights that's been made this year, and I'm very lucky to be joined by a good friend of mine on this show to break down this fight and the rest of the topics in the MMA world. Anthony Walker from Sharedar.com. Anthony, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. How about yourself, my man?
It's good. It's not like we just did a show earlier together in a way.
It's not like we haven't talked in the past couple of hours. So yeah. But yeah, I'm happy to do it all over again. I'm really excited for this main event. UFC 243 is a garbage card overall, but has a fantastic main event. So I'm really pumped for that.
It definitely is lacking in certain depth for sure. And plus with the Holly Holm fight falling out against Raquel Pennington, loss of depth there automatically. But there's some highlights in the card, some certain names that we might talk about. Obviously, the co-main event, I think, is a great fight against Dan Hooker versus Ally Quint. I think that's a great, fun, lightweight matchup between a top 10 guy and a borderline top 15 guy in the division. Cannot wait to dissect that one with you. But let's break down the main event itself. Obviously, Whittaker versus Adesanya. I know who you are picking. I know you're picking Whittaker to win this one. Break it down for me a little bit. Why do you think Whittaker has what it takes to be the surging, momentous star that is Israel Adesanya?
Well, first off, I think it's important to note that this only rings true if we're going to see Robert Whittaker at his best. If we're going to see a healthy Robert Whittaker, which is something we haven't seen for quite some time. Now, I think that when we think of Robert Whittaker, we think of primarily a kickboxer, and that is a fair description. The striking is where he is the best, but he's also a guy who worked on his wrestling to the point where he was just shy of trying to go for the Australian national wrestling team, and apparently he would have had a spot on there had he chose to. Yes. And the only thing that stopped him was the UFC saying they'd strip him of his title if he decided to go that route. So we're talking about extremely high level wrestling. Already knows he has a high level of striking, and I think that combination. Oh, excuse me.
Whew. Oh, whoa! God bless you, sir.
Thank you. The allergies, man, are kicking my ass with the season change. But yeah, man. I think that he has a great opportunity to mix things up in a way that Israel Adesanya is not used to seeing, in a way that Kelvin Gastelum could not. I'm really excited for this fight. I'm honestly wouldn't be shocked if Adesanya pulled out a victory, but the money for me has got to be on Robert Whittaker. He's a proven guy. He's a guy who's been in there against more elite level competition. I think he's more battle tested. And yes, I am still thinking about that Gastelum fight. That was an amazing fight, but Whittaker has been through those several times over and has come out on top. I think he does it again Saturday.
I definitely understand the logic behind a Whittaker pick because it's probably the safer pick, right? Like you said, the second you say someone has fought better competition, that's the easier pick. Guaranteed 9 out of 10 times, that's the easier pick, is the guy who has fought better competition. Always will be. However, to sort of poke some holes into the argument that you put out there for Whittaker defeating and having the technical and stylistic sort of combination of skills, so to speak, to beat Adesanya. First off, the wrestling of Whittaker. While you are right that he was very close to being the national team, and from Luke Thomas's reporting that he could have if it wasn't for the UFC coming in and intervening, I think that largely has not been shown on the UFC level from an offensive standpoint. Defensively, we know that Whittaker is one of the best defensive wrestlers in the middleweight division, if not the best. I mean, he went, how many minutes with Yoel Romero?
50 minutes with Yoel Romero.
And how many times was he taken down? I think it was like twice.
Maybe once.
And
the first fight, he blew out his knee in the first round. It was defending takedowns from an Olympic silver medalist on one leg.
So obviously the counter wrestling that Whittaker has been able to sort of take in and adapt and evolve with it within his game over the last several years is evident. I don't think anyone really needs to dispute that. But then again, that does not really need it in this fight. Adesanya is not going to go for takedowns. He's not going to go drop down for a double leg or a single leg. He's probably not going to do that. So then we have to look at, okay, where has Whittaker been efficient and effective from an offensive wrestling standpoint? And to be honest, he really hasn't in the middleweight division. Luke Thomas did a fantastic breakdown on obviously the Mortal Kombat channel, dissecting his middleweight run of wrestling, so to speak. And there's been 3 takedown attempts from him in his entire middleweight run. And I think that is such a small sample size to really say he has, or not that he has, but that he likes to use wrestling in order to beat certain opponents like Adesanya. We haven't really seen that yet. You can maybe argue with Uriah Hall that certain grappling exchanges, certain takedowns at times in that fight were crucial for him winning the decision in a close fight not too long ago. But I think it's clear that while Whittaker is a good wrestler, that's not an implementation of his game at all. He really hasn't tried it. And on top of that, even with the Uriah Hall fight, I wouldn't say he was that successful and really that efficient with his wrestling and grappling in that fight. And I think Adesanya is showing great grappling, or I shouldn't say great grappling, vastly improving grappling ability from fight to fight that, in my opinion, should really counter the non-offensive wrestling game of Whittaker. Because while he has good wrestling, he doesn't use it. And it would be hard for me to say all of a sudden this guy who doesn't use wrestling from an offensive standpoint will be able to use it off of and I have to combine it with the X factor you wanted to sort of make a caveat and table it, but the layoff. And on top of that, the wars that he's been in. So you have a guy that's been inactive, facing a really stiff competition lately, and he's facing a lot of damage in that competition lately, facing a guy that he needs to have a game plan that he really has never implemented before. That's going to be hard. I feel like Whittaker is going to be stuck in the striking game with Adesanya, and then we have a discussion there, because Whittaker's boxing game is definitely superb.
And he's very good at closing distance.
His jab, his flurries. Yeah. Even at times you get almost like a Machida sense with his quickness when it comes to combinations, bolting in, right? I think he has deceptive power. I think he has great tight combinations when he needs to throw it. A great sense of when to throw single shots or combinations. Shot selection overall, I think, is pretty great. But Adesanya is clearly just either better in every category than him or significantly better than him in every category when it comes to the striking game. And I feel like because this game is going to be stuck in a striking mode most of the time, you're going to have some grappling exchanges, of course. It's going to be maybe scramble heavy. But at no point do I think Whittaker is going to be able to keep Adesanya on the ground. I don't think that's a possibility. He's never shown that.
No, but see, that's not actually the implementation of wrestling I'm expecting. I'm expecting to see a 2.0 version of what Kelvin Gastelum was able to do. What Gastelum was able to do was to threaten the takedown. He landed one or two here and there, but to get a hold of a leg, push him against the fence a little bit, and stifle just the part of his brain that says, okay, I'm kickboxing now. If you're able to do that, you might have some success. And Gastelum was able to land very effectively on Adesanya. Now, with a striker the caliber of Robert Whittaker, if he is able to threaten with just the possibility that he can take you down. Now I know that offensive wrestling is not something that he has done a lot of in his career, but if you are about to make a national team for wrestling, you know how to take someone down.
Absolutely. No. Again, he absolutely has the skill, but to not implement it is a clear sign of something. Whether or not it's mentally that's not in his style yet to actually shoot for takedowns. You know what I mean? Like that's a style of fighting.
The guys that he's fought since that time, kind of refining his wrestling. Those are guys that you're not going to try to take down. You're not going to try to have a wrestling battle with Derek Brunson when you have the striking of Robert Whittaker. You're not going to do that against Jacare, who's one of the best guys on the ground, period. Yoel Romero, a silver medalist in freestyle wrestling, you're not going to do that either.
Of course. And he did shoot for a takedown against Romero, but I think that was largely because he was hurt at the time.
Yeah, that was more like a desperation takedown.
I think the Uriah Hall fight is probably the best parallel we can use, right? Is because Uriah Hall is a lanky, traditional striker, kickboxer as well. Like he's the best parallel in the middleweight run that he's had, because other than that, it's probably going to be maybe
Wonder Boy is the best.
But that would be a welterweight, right? That'd be a welterweight.
Yeah, welterweight. But as far as like the caliber opponent, the sort of strikers that he's faced that are similar to Adesanya. Yes. I think he's a much different fighter now than he was definitely when he fought Wonder Boy.
That's why I don't count the 170,
and then even Uriah Hall.
I don't count the 170 run for him because, again, he was drained for that division. I think you compared it to the middleweight run. He is just a different fighter here. But Uriah Hall wasn't too long ago, 2015. I know that is now going on 4 years. I can't believe that. But that is the last traditional striker he has fought. And like you said, he has fought traditionally grapplers since then. Rafa Natal, Derek Brunson, Jacare, Romero. These are all grapplers. Mm-hmm. And even in the Uriah Hall fight, grappling wasn't a thing that he was dominant in my opinion. And on top of that, I think that was part of his game plan. Now, can he implement it in this fight? Maybe. And now to your point more so about the threat of the takedown then having a effect on the striking of the fight, just the pure threat of that takedown, right? Obviously, that sets up different shots, different angles for punching combinations, absolutely. Even different kicks, right? We saw even the Gastelum head kick that hurt Adesanya. That was set up, that was set up through a takedown feint, if you look back on it. So, can Whittaker sort of implement what Gastelum did right in that strategy in this fight? Absolutely. But then we're also dealing with a guy like Adesanya who's been evolving and greatly evolving with each fight. It's harder to say that with Whittaker because his last couple fights have been against the same person. They've been back-to-back wars that have been controversial decisions where a lot of people think the other guy won. And on top of it, like you said, the first fight he was injured. So that automatically stopped sort of what can we see from Whittaker in terms of growth because he was on one leg. The game plan instantly shift. The second fight, I would say we saw a little bit of the same Whittaker as we have seen, especially in the Jacare fight. So I don't know what version of Whittaker we're getting here. While I know we have an Adesanya that is improving drastically and is clearly at the world level. And I know the idea of like who's been in the fire more. I think obviously the 50 minutes with Romero means more than 25 minutes with Gastelum, but the 25 minutes with Gastelum, I think, is a clear indicator that Adesanya can potentially take whatever punishment and damage that Whittaker throws at him. And if he doesn't, it's probably due more to the fourth and fifth round of a sustained punishment. Maybe Whittaker has a great night, and he's on fire, and his jab's on point. He's threatening with a takedown, and we see a late fight stoppage. But I'll be honest, I don't think we see that. I think we see not necessarily diminished Whittaker, but a Whittaker that has stalled in a way, because that's what happens in your career. It's the Dominic Cruzes of the world that can come back from 2 years and knock out Muzugaki in 30 seconds, then come back 2 years later and beat TJ Dillashaw in a split decision. That is rare. I don't know if Whittaker is that guy yet, and I like Whittaker, but it's hard to bet on that, to be quite honest.
But also, let's keep in mind too that this wasn't just pure inactivity for Robert Whittaker. He hasn't been laying in a hospital bed the entire time. Like he had 2 fights that were canceled in the last minute after having training camps for them. So it hasn't been like he's been totally inactive. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Whereas if he had just had a series of ACL tears back to back to back like Dominic Cruz, then we're talking about a very long period of time where he's not really doing anything. There's been time for Whittaker to improve upon his skill. There's been time for him to make technical adjustments. It's just that when it came for fight time, something happened last moments. He's no longer eligible to compete. And then we have the issue there.
Agreed. It's just one of those, it's a little bit of a question mark right now. Right. Adesanya, to be honest, in the right now, is actually the more proven product. And I don't think people realize that. We look back on the Romero fights, but those are a little bit a while ago. And on top of that, again, those are controversial close fights. And I think that gets lost at times as well. But moving on to the rest of the card, co-main event, Dan Hooker versus Ally Quinta. And your thoughts on this fight? Because I'll be honest, Ally Quinta is one of those guys where there's moments where I'm like, man, he's all of a sudden really putting it together, and he might make a run for the title. And then he fights Don Cerrone and just gets outstrike and just gets beaten up all night. Dan Hooker's a long, rangy striker who's improving drastically in the same camp as Israel Adesanya, so you know that he has that same great coaching. Are we going to see a similar sort of fight as the Cerrone fight for Ally Quinta?
I think we might in parts, but I do think that he'll be able to use the veteran savvy. I mean, Donald Cerrone is so battle tested. He's a guy who's been in there against so many people, against so many different styles, and he's proven himself worthy in just about any scenario you throw him in, especially in an extended fight. The longer the fight goes on, he starts picking up steam. This is a 3-rounder, and we're dealing with a guy with a lot less experience than Donald Cerrone, a guy who doesn't show the same ability to adjust on the fly as Cerrone has been able to show. I see Al being able to kind of jam him up. I see him being able to stay in his face, keep the pressure up, and kind of stifling Dan Hooker. Now, maybe this is Dan Hooker's time, and that's not so far out of the realm of possibility. It's certainly the betting odds have it even enough to where you're like, I think Hooker is a slight favorite in this. So this really could go either way, but I'm feeling Aya Quinta getting in there, getting in his face, jamming him up, and making life difficult. And with 3 rounds to work, you really only have to out pressure him and outmaneuver him for 2 rounds to make this game plan work for a decision win.
It's definitely going to be close. I think if Ally Quinta get in close and start throwing combinations, and Dan Hooker can't really get that separation that he kind of needs to get his kicks going, to get his long straight punches going, it could be a rough night for Dan Hooker. And as we've seen, especially with like Edson Barboza, if you get a little bit inside that range of Dan Hooker and start unloading with your own shots, Hooker doesn't react well. He doesn't react defensively well. And on top of that, he will just sit there and take a beating. I can see this being a 3-round sort of beating for Dan Hooker, but I am sort of sensing a crossroads moment for Ally Quinta, a guy that has also been inactive at times, not really, I think, been committed to combat sports the way you need to be at this high level, and that's why we saw him beat Kevin Lee and then lose to Don Cerrone, which makes no sense in my opinion. I think we're going to see sort of that moment here where he should win against Dan Hooker because he is more experienced. Is clearly, I think, a little bit more refined in terms of boxing ability, and plus his wrestling, I think, is far better than Dan Hooker. But is he focused enough? Has he been in the gym enough to evolve his game and to stay with the times? Like a Dan Hooker who's in the gym all day, every day, a young guy that has the fire for the sport. I'm going to take that more often than not, usually, against the old guy that doesn't really seem to have the fire, so to speak.
So you really doubting how much Iaquinta has been training? Like, did you not see the man in the gym with Bagel Boss?
I knew the second you said training, I'm like, oh, he's gonna go Bagel Boss, isn't he? He's 100% gonna go Bagel Boss, and then 2 seconds later, you proved me right. Yeah, I definitely doubt what his sort of focus is when he's trying to help Bagel Boss guy fight. By the way, did not show up for his fight.
Yeah,
he bailed last minute.
Trash.
Snowflake.
And see that was y'all hero, huh? All y'all fools out there watching, that was y'all hero. Bagel Boss was it, huh?
But back to the fight.
Pumpernickel pump.
Yeah,
all right.
I think again, if Al Iaquinta was fighting 3 or 4 times a year, he might be a top 5 guy in the division. Like, he could beat Justin Gaethje potentially. He could beat a lot of these guys. I think you run back the Cerrone fight, if he was dedicated to the sport, he should beat Cerrone. Like, he should not have lost that fight.
Right.
I think the obvious disdain for the UFC's management has led him to not really have that hunger for the sport as he used to. Shouldn't really be shocking. But this should still be a fun fight, because even a unfocused, unmotivated Al Iaquinta still brings it every time. And these two guys stylistically should produce a fun fight. Now, the rest of the card, instant drop in competition level and just quality. I mean, you have Tai Tuivasa versus Sergey Spivak. My name is so much better, by the way, Spivak.
Yeah, actually, your name sounds cooler. But
I mean, definitely, you're a Star Trek villain in my story. Jake Matthews is on the card against Rostam Akman. Megan Anderson versus Zara Dos Santos. It's rough out here in these streets. Let's be honest.
This is $60 for Whittaker versus Adesanya, essentially, and Dan Hooker versus Iaquinta, damn good fight too.
It's the good salad or soup before your main entree.
Right, and Tuivasa versus Sergey Spivak. I'm pretty sure someone not named Tai Tuivasa is going to go to sleep in this. I'm pretty sure about that.
But then again, Tai Tuivasa definitely seems like a guy that never really trains. Like, I don't know how he has gotten this far, not in life, but just like in the
heavyweight. It's heavyweight. Like that's essentially what's going on here. I mean, it's if you can hit hard, you might have a shot. So this is shout out to the homie Ben Duffy, fellow guy at Sherdog, who's done it. We've done a lot of podcasting together lately. Mm-hmm. And one thing that he was very adamant about on our panel show, Unleashed on the Walkout Network, was that this was a card that was made to please Australian fans. This was a card to have the Australian guys or New Zealand guys, anyone from the Oceanic region to come out there and just floor someone, because the matchups are done in that favor. So maybe looking at it through that light, maybe I'm rethinking Iaquinta versus Dan Hooker, but for the rest of the card, like, most of these guys should smoke whoever is in front of them if they come from that region. Like, that's the idea. The only fight on here that's truly that's like, oh, really just question my, oh my God, I have no idea what's going to happen, are two guys from the Oceanic region fighting one another in the main event.
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of fights. I have no idea who these guys are. So, like, anyone could win. I don't know. I don't care.
I'm making assumptions about the rest of the card, straight up and down, because
there's another Oceanic versus Oceanic fight.
Yeah, and that's Brad Riddle and Jamie Malarkey. And
Malarkey, by the way, great name.
Yeah, that is a dope. That's a really dope name. So, I mean, I don't really know much about either one of these guys. Check out their records real quick, but UFC debut for Malarkey.
Yo, I also like. Hold on, I like the I don't know who I don't know what country this is. Hold on, Jorgen De Castro versus Justin Tafa, two heavyweights with a combined record of 8-0.
Yeah,
Oh,
at least
my God, that's gonna be a dumpster
at
fire.
least Jorgen De Castro came from the Contender Series, so I'll give him that. But Justin Tafa has been, he's had a couple good knockouts on the regional circuit in Australia, and is now on a UFC pay-per-view main card. Like
he's had 3 fights. What they're doing. He's had 3 fights, dog. Like and he's a heavyweight. That means he's gonna be so bad. Oh my God.
Yeah, this is gonna be a really, really bad fight. That is going to be a dreadful fight. But somebody's gonna get knocked out in that one.
And they have it where it's like the show actually in Australia is on Sunday, but it's gonna be Saturday prime time for us, right?
Right. So it starts like Sunday morning, I think, for Australia.
I feel so bad for the Australians. Like, why not just make it prime time? Honestly, like I don't. And don't make a pay-per-view. Shocker, I know. Oh no. Yeah. Digressing though. Moving on to another card coming up this weekend. Then we're going to cover a brief rumor / news story that I'm going to be making up and really pushing out there to the masses. And then sort of circling back to the last weekend of fights, UFC Copenhagen, Bellator, Dublin, 227, 228. The smorgasbord of Bellator cards that we're going to be talking about. Why the fuck do we need that much Bellator? But Bellator 229, Korskov versus Larkin. First off, I like the main event, obviously. But the rest of the card's a truly Bellator card. So I have no real thoughts about that. And it's a really long card. I mean, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 fights on this card.
So the breakdown of this card is totally illogical. There are 2 prelim fights. I think there are 6 main card fights, and the rest are post limbs.
I know.
Bellator is. I'm not quite understanding what's going on over there sometimes. Like this makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But at least post limbs, when there are post limbs, you kind of know not to pay attention to them. Like that's just kind of what it's saying. It's saying it's making it very clear these are the fights to not care about. These are the fights that we put on this card to make sure people stay in the building because it's their friends and family members in the crowd. So it's filled during the main event. That's essentially what this is.
It's the equivalent to like maybe like a blooper reel in the credits of a movie. Like not enough as like a cut scene to like hint at like the next Marvel Avengers movie, but like it's a blooper reel. Like if it's funny enough, you might stay and watch the credits in the movie theater. But
it's like at the end of every Jackie Chan movie where it shows the stunts that went wrong.
Like maybe you're down for it that one time, but most of the time you can kind of check out. You've seen it before. It's the same shit. You can catch on YouTube.
Yeah, and the thing is, they do have some good names on this Bellator card. I mean, obviously the main event, Saad Awad is a good guy to watch. Joe Schilling, who's a notable name from the kickboxing world, who now, granted, he has a sub 500 MMA record, but he's been dividing his time between both sports. Apparently now he's going full time MMA.
He shouldn't.
See if that yields any results.
It won't. Yeah.
Ye of little faith.
Yes, definitely. Like we really don't need to talk about Bellator in depth because they have made themselves quite clear what level they are in the pecking order. But question from the chat, 92 Aku, who's a good supporter and listener of the show, more of a boxing guy, so I understand the question. Is this fight bigger? Is this fight a bigger deal than a Jeff Horn fight? Well, first off, 92, this fight is in Marvel Stadium down there in Melbourne, right? And that's a gigantic soccer stadium, right? I want to say like it's like
60,000 or something like that.
It's a big one, and this one's going to sell probably 40 to 50 something thousand. I'm going to assume. Is it a sellout? Have they announced it's a sellout?
I haven't seen an announcement that it's a sellout. I got an email yesterday, I believe it was, saying that there were still tickets available.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how many. But I do know that the goal is to break the record set by Rousey and Holm, which I think was I want to say 53,000 in attendance for that.
I want to say like 55. But to compare to maybe like Pacquiao, Jeff Horn, which was also in a big stadium, but I don't think it was a one that big. I think it was like a 35,000 seater. Don't have that on hand at the top of the head. But this is probably equivalent, if not bigger, and probably bigger, to be honest, mainly because it's an all-oceanic fight. It's Australia versus New Zealand. Mm-hmm. And that in of itself makes it something unique, you know?
Yeah. And then on top of that, too, I think now Adesanya has positioned himself as the villain of this fight. For multiple reasons. One, that he's the louder guy, he's more brash, he's a cockier guy. But
naturally,
I don't know if you watched that press conference that took place around UFC 241. That they had the press conference in Australia, and he was getting into it with some fan or something that asked a question about his heritage, and he's saying like, "Hey, I'm not." A Kiwi. I'm an African. I'm black, and the crowd didn't like that too much. And those are the sort of things that will instantly propel you to being a villain in the eyes of the fans that are looking for a hometown or home country star.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how his stardom sort of transcends and rises in that region of the world and also in the U.S., right? Because he's also, I think, a burgeoning U.S. star. But again, back to the question. Sorry, 92. I'm going to say it's bigger than a Jeff Horn fight easily. Especially like an average Jeff Horn fight. This is way bigger. Jeff Horn, Manny Pacquiao, probably bigger as well. Moving on to the news. Not really news. It's really just a rumor, and then we're going to talk about some fights and then other news.
The rumor that you're starting, or
the one that I'm starting? Absolutely.
Okay,
guys, just look at this picture.
Fake news
of Georges St. Pierre next to Kevin Lee and Olivier Aubin-Mercier. Oh my God, he's going to be a lightweight. Guys, we're getting Khabib versus GSP. It's happening. It's official. Maybe, I don't know.
Probably not official.
No, it's definitely not official. Don't quote me on that. 100% not official. But this is a very lean-looking GSP. I'm going to go back and put the picture on the screen just for those that want to see it a little more in depth. He's next to Kevin Lee and Aubin-Mercier, two lightweights, right? Kevin Lee dropping back down to lightweight, which we're going to talk about coming up against Gregor Gillespie. He looks like a fucking lightweight, easily. And on top of that, he looks significantly smaller than Aubin-Mercier. Like, wow. Maybe Mercier is getting a little gut there that he needs to start working out a little more. I don't know. But GSP is looking lean and mean, and I think attach that with him having another picture on his Instagram where Khabib he posted under it with the sort of side-eye look emoji, and it was like 155 question mark. Again, guys, like, come on. The writing's on the wall. We've heard really zero traction or attention about Tony Ferguson versus Khabib. It's clear that behind the scenes, they're trying to make this fight. And am I crazy? Do I have a tinfoil hat? Or am I onto something?
I think you're onto something.
Oh, yes. Yes.
First of all, I think the opportunity to screw over Tony Ferguson again is something that Dana White can't pass up. I think that the temptation to screw over Tony Ferguson is going to creep around again. But seriously, yeah, it makes sense. Like that's the biggest fight that they can put on right now. I think, at least with the unless you throw McGregor. Brock Lesnar into the equation or Conor McGregor. Like aside from those two names, I think that's kind of the best you can do as far as a big money fight. Also, GSP and Khabib have been kind of playing this back and forth with one another in a respectful way, very respectful way. But GSP left the door wide open to come back for a Khabib fight in his so-called retirement speech. To be saying, yeah, I'm totally done with this. I'm retired. We couldn't make this fight, and that was it for me. So I think I'm done. But if they make the fight, yeah, I'm back in. Like that's essentially what it was. It was a cry to have this fight take place. I don't think the desire for that has lost GSP at all. And then also let's factor in, he's standing next to Kevin Lee, who is a top contender at lightweight. Probably could have more success at welterweight if he decided to stick there and really commit his body to that. But then also training with Tyron Woodley now, who's part of TriStar.
I forgot about that.
Tyron Woodley, who just had the welterweight belt earlier this year, could very well be back in a title fight before long. I think GSP training with those guys on a regular basis and having those sparring rounds with current top contenders is going to keep that mind going. Also, Roy McDonald, part of that camp as well, who's Bellator welterweight champion.
I mean, he looks like he's slipping, but I definitely think that.
But he's in there. He's in there against elite championship caliber talent 10, on a regular basis.
Top 5, top 10, top 20 guys constantly. I mean, how is that? I mean, clearly GSP's like fire for like martial arts has never left. Right, that's the weird part. Like the guy's clearly training all the time with top level UFC guys still to this day. So, like, how do you pass up a Khabib fight? The best grappler in MMA now. Like if you're a GSP, who is a guy that has prided himself on being like that, the best wrestler ever in MMA, I guarantee you he sees that as a challenge that he wants more than anything.
Yeah, just ego right there.
I want to take down.
Desire to challenge yourself. You want that.
I want to take down this guy that everyone can't take down. That's taken down everyone, because that was me. I was him a decade ago. I bet I can beat him now in my old age. And I guess what? I'm gonna drop down to a weight class I've never been to and beat him there. I guarantee you, GSP finds that motivating. So, and on top of that, like you say, he's training with top level guys. So it's clear that he is still. He has the ability to still, I think, compete on this level to some degree. I know there's been some sort of narrative that he's damaged goods. I don't understand that narrative at all.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, if he's damaged by anything, it's father time, and that's it.
And we don't even know that. I mean, he came back off a 4-year layoff and beat Michael Bisping at middleweight, for God's sake.
Yeah. So I think any narrative that you can construct around that, saying that this isn't a competitive fight or then just knock it off, because that's just not true.
Now, of course, if you want the Tony Ferguson fight more, I absolutely understand. I agree with you. But for some reason, Khabib's not out there and Tony Ferguson's mentions adding him. You know, like that's a clear indicator of something in my mind.
I'll tell you what, for all the talk that a lot of guys do, because Khabib was definitely one of those guys that was talking about McGregor's run as champion, and he needs to give up the belt and this and that, and all about the sporting integrity thing. All those guys, whenever they get the belt and they are in the position of power, they always want the money fights. You know, and I understand it. I'm not knocking it. I think that's kind of what they should be trying to do. They should be trying to get as much money as possible and get the whatever matchups they want. They should go and try that. Every fighter should try to negotiate in their own self-interest. But I mean, for all that talk, I mean, he's even said Tony Ferguson should be the next guy. But to say that and then be like, yeah, but I really want this GSP fight. Let's not be surprised here.
Yeah, it's going to happen in 2020. Whether it happens before the Tony fight or after the Tony fight, I think is kind of beside the point. The fight's going to happen. It's a clear money fight. It's clear that the casual fans and people like me, who legitimately love the sport, follow it day in, day out, want this fight too. Like, this fight is appealing to some degree. This is a throwback to, like, true, like, UFC 1 days of, like, let's get, like, the two best martial artists of different, like, disciplines against each other. Let's get these two best guys, different eras, different divisions, but on top of that, clear sort of analogies of each other, clear allegories of each other in some ways, clear two sides of one coin in terms of MMA. Have them fight. Why not? Let's decide who is the best grappler of all time, because I think the winner of this fight would determine that, to be honest. If GSP out grapples Khabib, it's clear GSP is the best grappler of all time. And vice versa. Imagine if Khabib's the guy to take George down after all these Division I wrestlers at welterweight for a decade or plus couldn't do it. It would be an indicator of something, obviously.
Yeah.
Moving on, fights this last weekend. Jack Hermanson versus Jared Cannonier, UFC on ESPN Plus 18, a.k.a. UFC Copenhagen. Oh, my God. Jared Cannonier, I mean, where does he rank now for, like, most terrifying fighters of all time? He's high on my list. Like, when I watch him, I'm scared.
I wouldn't go with the all time, but as of right now, he's definitely one of the scariest guys out there. He definitely is, and it's almost like it came out of nowhere.
Yes,
but then when I'm thinking back, like maybe we should have seen this already. Like maybe because even even when he fought Glover Teixeira in a fight he definitely lost, it was like he showed some good things there, and he was a guy who was really out of his depth. At that elite level of competition, and a guy who clearly body-wise, I mean, he's a guy that fought at heavyweight and then light heavyweight, and he body-wise was not what he could have been. And now you see this chiseled version of him at 185 in great shape, who retained all of the power, who's got more speed now than anything else. And that is a very and a guy who learns so fast in the moment. This guy is learning. It is scary what this man is capable of.
And on top of that, like the timing, the shot selection, the accuracy, like it is just like not only does he have the athleticism and the power and the speed, especially the speed. That's one thing that I want to highlight, especially more so than probably the power, is how fast he is. But his technique is just on another level now than it was 2 or 3 fights ago even. Like it's insane the leaps and bounds that this guy has sort of taken. And again, the time span of 18 months, it seems. I mean, the sky's the limit for this guy. I've been saying ever since I saw this fight, book him against Romero. That is 2 guys who at any point could finish each other, who are technically, I think, at another level than a lot of the middleweights right now. And it will answer who's the most terrifying fucking middleweight right now. Because I think it's one of these guys, right? Like, sorry, Adesanya and Whittaker. I know you guys are like fighting for the best guy in the division. But who's the most terrifying motherfucker in the division?
Okay, who just scares the living shit out of you?
Yes. Give me that fight, please. Because obviously, Paulo Borchina Costa is going to be fighting the winner of Adesanya Whittaker. And really, I think there's like maybe Gastelum Till winner for Cannonier, but
that's kind of the fight I was feeling more for Cannonier. But Romero, I like that too. I mean, because let's keep right as of right now, Jared Cannonier is ranked number 5 in the division. Mm-hmm. So you think of some of the other names, like he hasn't fought too many guys at middleweight. I think this was only his second or third fight at middleweight. Let me double check that to get that exact number. But yeah, like he's fought before that. Before Hermanson, it was David Branch and Anderson Silva. So it was his third middleweight fight. There are a lot of guys at middleweight that are some of the best guys that he hasn't fought. You know, he hasn't fought a Derek Brunson. He hasn't fought Ian Heinich. But he's ranked number 5. He's ranked above all those guys. So why turn back and fight them when Romero isn't booked yet? I mean, granted, he's probably still healing after what happened at UFC 241, but that's a fight that would be lovely. The winner of Till Gastelum would be lovely.
Yes, those 2 fights I think are the clear fights for Cannonier next.
Yeah, and anything else doesn't really make a lot of sense for him.
No, you beat Anderson Silva and Jack Hermanson, who just beat Jacare by submission, or no, by decision, but he had him in some submission holds. Like, how do you not give Cannonier that step up to a Romero, who's clearly like the gatekeeper to the belt? Like, you beat him, you get the title shot. Or Gastelum, who's probably the next best thing you can fight at this point in time. Jay Prodigy, though, in the chat, longtime listener, saying y'all acting like he didn't get finished by Dominic Reyes
at light heavyweight.
But just to play devil's advocate for Jay, because our phone lines are down. Skype is, though, open if you guys want to call in on Skype, Mixed Combat Radio. Is it, I mean, Dominic Reyes, let's be honest here, while he is highly ranked in the light heavyweight division, I don't think he is the most extremely talented, or not talented, the most extremely skilled individual, right? Like, I don't think Reyes is anywhere close to top 10, 20 pound for pound status. Like, not anywhere close to that, right? While certain guys like Romero are clearly, I think, closer to like top 20 pound for pound status, if you want to argue. Like pure skill, talent, everything. If you get finished and beat up by Dominic Reyes, like, how can you beat Romero, who, even though he isn't a light heavyweight, he's still a big guy, still better than Reyes, still more talented than Reyes. You know, like, if you're losing to this level of competition and this talent level of competition, why are you then going to beat this level? I think that's what the argument is.
I mean, I get it, but I gotta strongly disagree with the line of reasoning, because Jared Cannonier is clearly a different fighter than he was in that Reyes fight. To finish David Branch the way he did, to like kind of learn as he's fighting, which like David Branch for all the naysayers, man, was a 2-division champion, a World Series of Fighting. He's a guy who perpetually has been overlooked throughout a lot of his career. Very legit jiu-jitsu black belt, very legit on the feet as well. Cannonier had some initial problems and then immediately closed those gaps in the next round, finished him. The Anderson Silva fight, he just leg kicks Anderson Silva to death. Nuts. And then for the way he learned so fast against Hermanson, the way he seemed to just get better with every bit of offense that Hermanson threw his way, was spectacular. And then also that's discounting the difference of him between being light heavyweight and being middleweight. His body is in optimal shape at middleweight. He has the speed. He's got the power to still retain. Like, we're talking about Jared Cannonier at middleweight. We're talking about a far superior version of him that we saw at 205. Now, if you could take the 205 version of Dominic Reyes and shrink him down to 185, that version of Jared Cannonier runs through him like there's no tomorrow. We're talking about a totally different fighter.
And again, like, if you want to say like Reyes beat him, that's awesome. But like, Jack Hermanson's a much better fighter than Reyes, and Cannonier just beat him. You know, like, clearly, like, fighters can evolve quickly over time. Let's be honest. On top of that, a little bit of confusion, or some people a little bit upset about me saying that Romero is a gatekeeper to the title. And because people don't like the word gatekeeper, because I think that's derogatory. I'm not using the very, I would say, common definition or connotation of the word gatekeeper, a guy that's like a top 20 guy. You beat him, you're a top 10, 15 guy in the division. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he's a gatekeeper to the title. That means he's ranked third.
The perennial top 5 guy.
Yeah.
That doesn't win the belt.
Yes.
Or the consistent number 2 ranked guy who just can't get over the hump to number 1. Like, there's absolutely no insult in that.
John Fitch was the gatekeeper to George St. Pierre for 5 years. You know, Daniel Cormier, in a way, was a gatekeeper to John Jones for a period of time. You know, like, you can argue certain guys were gatekeepers to certain guys, but hey, they're still the second or third best guy in the division for a perennial amount of time. So, like, what are you? That's not a criticism. That's actually a compliment. You know, there are degrees of gatekeepers. Like, there's degrees of prospects, degrees of champions. You know, that's how it works, guys.
Yeah. Yoel Romero is probably the greatest fighter to never win a UFC belt.
Definitely up there in that conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah, he definitely deserved to be mentioned in that conversation. So, there's no insult in that. There's zero insult in that. The greatest fighter to never win a UFC belt. Therefore, if you beat him, you're probably deserving a belt. You're probably at least deserving a shot at the belt. So that's a pretty high compliment right there, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Moving on to the rest of the card, I'm not going to go in depth. Mark Madsen picked up a huge win in a hometown fight for him. Gilbert Burns picked up a much-needed win against Gunnar Nelson. Ian Tutaleba picked up a shocking win against Khalil Roundtree, mainly due to the style finish and just Tutaleba's energy.
Roundtree's deficiencies on the ground.
Oh, my God. Roundtree. Like, he is a guy that is so talented, but like what are you doing at times? Digressing. OSP picking up a much needed win, and it's Michael.
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 Mikel.
Or Michelle. As, some European.
That guy.
Some European men are named Michelle.
Yeah, that guy. He beat that guy.
Nicholas Dalby, who I've always been a big fan of, pick up a win against Alex Oliveira.
Thanks in part two, very, very, very shitty reffing. Let's put that out there. That ref was horrible.
Awful.
Horrible. That guy was trash.
And on top of it, I'm still wondering what the hell has happened with Alex Oliveira's domestic violence case where he kidnapped his kid on a motorcycle, and they found that is like the strangest story that there's been almost zero follow-ups on.
Like that's a strange story for Alex Oliveira, and this is a guy who got hit with a grenade on Christmas. So that guy, his life would make a wonderful made-for-TV movie.
I forgot about that story about the grenade. Yeah,
and he also has 7 baby moms that live in the same neighborhood.
Yep. He is an interesting person to put it.
He is a raw dog, explosive, loving fool out there in Brazil. So
I can't blame him. Mark Takasi, to sort of skip some fights. Mark Takasi picking up a huge win against Lando Venata, and Mark Takasi, just one of those guys who, man, I am such a fan of, always have been, and he has been improving fight to fight. That low calf leg kick was
beautiful.
Beautiful. I'm shocked he didn't finish Lando with that kick, to be honest. Even the first round.
Yeah, his leg was bruising up in the first 45 seconds.
It was bad. I was thoroughly impressed. Jack Shore, huge prospect, picked up a win in his UFC debut as well. And any other thoughts on UFC Copenhagen?
Macy Chielsen, disappointed in that. I mean, she was somebody that I think they were really trying to position for some level of promotion and stardom, but she couldn't get it done against Lena Landsberg. Other than that, I think other than that, not a whole lot really stood out to me on this card. I think the officiating was pretty bad throughout. Some very strange scorecards. The aforementioned performance by the referee in the Dalby Oliveira fight. I can't remember that ref's name right now. And in fact, we should never hear his name again. No, he just needs to not exist as a referee. I mean, as bad as that was, I mean, the times that he stood the fight up when guy was in half guard getting pummeled against the fence, and you stand it up. You stand up position when a guy takes an illegal up kick, and then you take the good position away from him. No, this guy, no, trash, absolute trash,
all around trash.
Yeah, so one of the lists that I wrote for MMA On Point was the 10 worst referees of all time.
Nice.
I wish I could redo that list so I can add this man on it
as number 1, of course, right?
Mazzagatti and Yamasaki are 1A, 1B. And then this guy being there. But then you got Kim Winslow is trash too. Kim Winslow sucks.
I miss Kim Winslow, man.
Oh man, she sucks. Cecil People was trash.
Cecil
he's still a trash judge.
Yeah, he's an awful judge.
Yeah, Jaron Vallel, garbage. Boy, it's some garbage ass refs out there. Dan Mergliata, man, had some garbage reffing in Bellator Dublin this weekend. Normally he's a very good ref, but come on, Dan.
Now, speaking of garbage, Bellator this last weekend had 3 events. That was really 2, but they wanted to split the one into 2 different events, and
one that you no-showed because you were sick. I understand. Yeah. You were homesick and missed out on the fun at the forum.
Yes. Well, that was definitely for fight week coverage because I was going to go for Mixed Combat Radio and just get set for my site. I didn't go for fight day because cut the check. But digressing from that, I'll be honest, you know me, Ant, I struggle to follow non-UFC MMA events. I feel like they make it very difficult to be a fan of, a la the Dublin 227 split up tape delay, whatever they did there, that I'm still confused by.
That you can only watch on the app on your phone, and yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And stuff like LFA with its Access TV dropping out, its deal dropping out. Like, it just seems like it's difficult to stay up to date with regional or
other promotions. Period. I mean,
yeah, just for, one championship is at a weird time all the time. Rising, that's a weird time all the time.
And one championship now is officially behind a paywall with Bleacher Report Live.
It's just a weird time for MMA promotions not name the UFC. And the overarching point of this topic is a one that we've talked about in this industry for a very long time, unfortunately, but it's oversaturation. Is there an oversaturation of, let's just be honest, bad MMA? Because obviously there's highlights of like Henderson, Miles Jury. That's a good fight. Like, I don't know why that got no media attention. That should,
because it was tape delayed and nobody could watch it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's the Bellator bearing their own product. So and the thing is, Bellator has a lot of good fights going on a regular basis. They have a lot of good fighters. I think, granted, the organization has got its own set of problems for sure, but they're pretty reliable to put on an entertaining card. But they do themselves a big disservice by bearing their own product. But in general, there's a lot of bad MMA, but because there's only so many people in the world that fight at an elite enough level where you feel like you want to hand someone money to watch them perform.
Mm-hmm.
And when the UFC is running 45 cards a year, whatever the number is, I want to say it's 42 cards in a year. And Bellator's running 3 in a day, or and then they'll go on a 4-week hiatus and then another 2 in a day or whatever. Yeah, it's there's not that much talent to spread out, so the product's going to get compromised all the way around. There is a lot of good MMA outside of the UFC, absolutely. I will say, but the thing is, you just have to sift through a lot of stuff that you want, and then now it's to the point where you have to sift through a lot of filler to get to good UFC.
Absolutely.
And it's just more about the sport in general at this point.
And Jay in the chat saying, yeah, because they're in Asia. One championship fans probably say the same about UFC. But the difference is, if you're an MMA fan in Asia, you have to watch the UFC card. Whether you watch it live or not, it's beside the point. But you have to watch it. Why? Because it's the highest level of MMA.
Yeah, like it's bar none the elite of the elite. So there's no way, just because Khabib is going to be fighting at 3 a.m. for you, that doesn't not make him the best lightweight in the world.
And that not make it, if you're an MMA fan, that still makes it must watch TV or streaming or whatever, because you're an MMA fan and that's Khabib Nurmagomedov, the best lightweight in the world. If you're an MMA fan anywhere in the world, okay, one championship or Bellator or LFA or PFL, these promotions don't offer the same high level product that the UFC does.
As consistently.
And that is an issue, especially if you then take it to more specific, a U.S. fan having to follow a combined factor of a MMA promotion overseas that is not offering the best content on MMA. Why sift through the 8 hours of an MMA event to find the 1 or 2 good fights that you're going to find for one championship card or Ryzen, when you could just get your fill of combat sports watching a UFC card on ESPN Plus, and then maybe watch a Spence Porter fight or Triple G Derevchenko or whatever other big combat sports event is going on in your market. It's just, you're competing with so much. If you're the small MMA promotion, you're competing with so much on that day, and you don't really have the product to necessarily compete with your competitors. So it's an issue. Like, to say it's not an issue is just ignorant. There is a clear issue with oversaturation of too much bad MMA with all these small MMA promotions. I don't know what the solution is, because the solution is probably less opportunities for fighters, to be quite honest. And that's not a popular thing to say, to be honest. But that's what it almost would have to be. No more 15 fight cards from Bellator where you have 2 or 3 fight cards in one weekend. There's no need for that. Consolidate that to one really good fucking card.
Yeah, I'm really just floored at the level of sabotage that Bellator does to their own product when they do events like this. So, for instance, the before last weekend when Gegard Mousasi fought Lyoto Machida, when he fought against Lovato Jr., that was something I think the average MMA fan would like to see. Like, even if you aren't an absolute diehard, you might know who Gegard Mousasi is. Yeah. You might recognize him from the numerous other promotions that he's fought for, including the UFC. So you might want to check that out. But how much patience are you going to have to try to find this on some app somewhere, or buried, or tape delayed, or whatever the case may be? So I'll put it to you this way. You are part of this crew as well. We're guys who cover this sport. And even if it's a little bit of money, we make money by our love of combat sports and following it, talking about it, reporting on it. Knowing that we should be on our jobs and watching as much as we can. Knowing that we have lots of, and on the top of that, we're just fans of it and we could just watch this stuff all day. Mm-hmm. We gave up. We said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not going to try to find this.
No.
I'm not going to, jump from this app to this channel, to this streaming service, to watch this one card. And I'm not going to, knowing I can see the results on Twitter as it actually happens. Yep. I'm not going to now sit in front of my TV to watch a tape delayed product. No, that's not how this works. There is no reason to have tape delayed sports in 2019, especially when your main broadcast partner is a fucking streaming app. And when you have an app of your own that you can just stream the fight. So I know they make some of them available, but that Henderson and Miles Jury fight was purely tape delayed in the US.
I still haven't seen it.
Thumbs up to you. I haven't seen that one either yet because I don't have time. We're on to the next cycle.
Yep.
We're on
the next
to
week.
The next
It's Wednesday already. Like,
we're on 243 now. We're talking about Bellator 229 now. We're not doing this game.
And in 3 days, we're going to be done talking about UFC 243 in a way and have to move on to the next cycle in the next week. Yeah. Like, that's just how it runs.
It just doesn't stop. So if you think for a second that your product is so good or so special that the rest of the world stops, it is not. It does not.
That your brand is so good, Bellator, that you can put on 40 fights in one weekend when there's UFC, a giant boxing pay-per-view, and compete in the sports entertainment market and landscape that weekend. Like, there's no way. I can't believe they actually did that. Like, to this day, and honestly, for the rest of my career, I'm still gonna be confused about Bellator's marketing and strategy.
Well,
overall,
here's one for you because Spence and Porter was I know that was pay-per-view, but I know DAZN was involved. Was that DAZN was involved with that fight, but it was a pay-per-view.
No, it wasn't. DAZN was not. DAZN.
I talking to a DAZN employee about this.
Well, you can tell that DAZN employee that they need to cite something or say something a little bit more because DAZN had zero access to the fight. So how did they involve?
No, but the company or whatever was responsible for Spence and Porter going on or something. They had something to do with this.
No, that's entirely false.
Trust me.
I understand that a DAZN employee told you that, but tell that DAZN employee to stop telling you bullshit.
No, trust me. This is DAZN.
They might have had access to it in like India. Or like Germany?
No, I'm not saying it was available on DAZN. I'm not saying.
I understand that, but yeah, there's zero connection with DAZN and these fighters and the management company. Like literally, they are competitors. PBC and DAZN do not like each other, so that's impossible. That's literally impossible. Like again, tell your DAZN employee source to stop bullshitting you. Because your boxing guy,
he's not a source. He's not a source.
Your boxing guy is calling bullshit on that.
Okay, well here's
and if you want, you can put him in contact with me directly because I will call him up and say stop spreading that bullshit.
You know him, but anyway, we're getting beside the point here. Apparently there was a lot of confusion as to why the Bellator card was going to go on the same day in the same city as Spence Porter. So yeah, a lot of internal confusion at DAZN about that, from what I was told. I'll tell you the story off air. But yeah,
but again, that wouldn't be because of DAZN like counter programming themselves anyway. Like that's impossible. DAZN has zero connections with PBC and Fox. Zero. Again, I know the DAZN employee you're talking about. He's full of shit. Like whatever he told you is bullshit. Like there's no way to have a business connection with that fight. Sorry. I follow this sport for a living. You can't. Sorry. I know this shit. I know bullshit. Speaking of bullshit, though.
The wrath of hipster
like,
Hunter.
I'm sorry. Like I don't want to hear network bullshit and
hit
promoter
the gunshots,
bullshit.
man.
Like,
Hit the gunshots.
Like honestly, like that infuriates me actually, because that's a guy working for a network.
Maybe I misheard it. Maybe I misheard it.
Talking to a reporter that's not his beat and giving
No. It wasn't. Trust. Just we'll talk off air. You know who it is.
Yeah.
And I might have misheard what was said. Trust me.
Because now if DAZN and Bellator were having some internal, let's say conflict, right? Let's just use that word because it's a nice trigger word, right? Conflict, right? Because the Bellator card was in the same city as Spence Porter, and they're like, why the fuck did you guys plan this? That's absolutely plausible. I would assume there was some internal discussions of that nature of, hey, Scott, hey, it's DAZN here. Why are we putting this big card on the same city and same time as one of the biggest boxing pay-per-views of the year? Like, that doesn't seem like a good idea. I 100% assume that conversation happened.
Well, Bellator got that date first, I believe. I'm pretty certain Bellator had that date first.
They might have had the date first. I don't know if they have the venue.
I think they did, because I remember when I remember that being announced, it was complete with at the Forum. And Spence Porter being made later. And I don't know. I actually might have been talking to you when that was announced, and they said it was going to be in Staples Center, and said, "Oh man, we got to go to this one." And then it was like, "Oh shit, it's on the same day as Bellator."
But yeah, I guarantee you, Spence Porter and Al Heyman and PBC did not give two shits about Bellator. That wasn't competition for them. It wasn't, and it clearly wasn't. Like, what was the attendance, honestly, for?
It wasn't a sellout at Bellator, that's for sure.
Did they have the top open at least?
I think so. Here's the thing. You weren't at Golden Boy MMA, right?
No. And okay. By the way, we're gonna
look similar to that.
We're gonna talk about Golden Boy MMA as well. Remind me. I gotta get the clip up. So talk for a second. I'm gonna get the clip up. And
okay, yeah. So if I'm remembering this correctly, I think the Bellator 228 attendance looked similar to Golden Boy MMA. I remember more at Bellator 214. That was Fedor and Ryan Bader. You were covering that card with me.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was a sellout.
That one was
packed, UFC 232 was a sellout. The Forum was fully packed for that. And UFC 199 fully packed for that. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say here that the attendance suffered a lot because of Spence Porter.
They had to. I mean, they're competing. I mean, obviously, like sports on the whole compete with each other, whether it's basketball, football. If you're in the same city and market, you're going to compete because sporting fans, there's a cross pollination of sporting fans, right?
Yeah. But if it's going on at the same time, you can only be at one place at one time. So,
and especially so in combat sports, there is a cross pollination in fandom,
and in LA especially too.
Yes, LA is one of the unique towns where you would see a lot of people cross that sort of picket line of combat sports that exists, especially in the East Coast that exist.
And ADCC was the next day in Anaheim also. So a lot of combat sports going on in the LA area.
And again, it's Bellator. Like I'm a combat sports fan. Spence Porter or Bellator. Spence Porter. 10 out of 10 times. It's not even a question.
That's the one that I really wanted to be at, but being a guy who primarily covers MMA, it's like you got to go. I have to do Bellator. But as a fan, I wanted to be at Spence Porter more.
so mad I didn't get in. Anyways.
Even if the DAZN employee, let me stop. So
that got me triggered, man. I was upset.
Well, I know how to get to you now, so I'm gonna use that later.
Oh man, I hate when networks are promoting network execs or promoters like talk bullshit. That it happens so much in boxing. It happens so much more often in boxing because it's more common to have promoters talk about each other in that way.
Yeah, this guy in NBC told me that he actually made the call to get Spence Porter done the same day.
Guy from NBC?
Mm-hmm.
NBC. You're just making up shit now. I feel like to get out of here, man. Hold on. Let's talk about. We're gonna talk about a lot of bullshit coming up here, okay? But let's first talk about Golden Boy MMA because let's be honest here, Ant. This is all we care about, right? I mean,
this is the pinnacle of what mixed martial arts can be.
I am so excited to cover this finally. Like, I am so jealous you guys got to cover this live. Because look, for those, hold on, before I play the clip, for those that have known me for a long time, know that I actually really don't like covering events. Like, I find it to be rather pedantic, and it's kind of the same old, same old. Like, the car wash of media questions and interviews sucks. Like, it's a long day, a lot of nothing, and then you have another 4 hours of editing after you're done. It's a pain in the ass, okay? However, though, whether it's a big fight or a shitty fight, those are the best ones to go to. The real dog shit cards or the best cards. Everything in the middle is run-of-the-mill. Like, it's boring, right? But the best cards, obviously, it's the best cards, right? Canelo Triple G. I will go to my grave remembering that for the rest of my life. Like, that is a highlight of my career. Easy. And then I have stuff like Robert Guerrero versus David Peralta in the Honda Center, where it only sold 2,000 tickets, maybe, in the Honda Center.
Wow.
Okay.
That had to look like a ghost town.
You have no idea, sir. And the media room, the snacks were 3 bags of chips and some apples. Okay. So, again, dog shit and great fights. And again, Canelo Triple G, open bar. I got sponsored by Chivas Regal to do a show. It's amazing. And then dog shit is 3 bags of chips and some apples and 2,000 people in a 25,000 seater. Hey, you get the wide spectrum. Golden Boy MMA is on the dog shit spectrum, obviously. And it is magnifico dog shit. It's perfect. And here is Oscar talking about Golden Boy MMA 2, as I'm going to call it, with Barstool Radio.
Aluminum Boy.
I just posited the question. My God, did that send him off on a naked rampage?
Well, that's Dana White for you. I mean,
right.
Look, he's what we call a bully. You know, one of those guys that has to bully you to get his way. I mean, that's the bottom line. Why do you think all his fighters, or a lot of these fighters, are not happy with their contracts, with how they get treated? Look, I tried, or actually, I am gonna get involved in the MMA. I'm working on something.
So that's gonna happen.
I'm working on something very exciting.
Okay.
And I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of heat from Dana White. but look, it creates opportunities. Look, you have Bellator, you have the UFC who want to monopolize the whole industry, and with Dana White being the cheerleader. But there's always room for another player. Why not? Cool. I mean, you give these fighters opportunities, and you create opportunities for fighters, and therefore you create big fights that the fans want to watch. So, look,
here, Oscar. Let me tell you something. I support it 100%, 110%. You do you, man. You want to waste your money on MMA events? You go for it, man. You want to waste your time not investing in your boxing promotion, which desperately needs your attention? You go for it, man. Because you know what? I'm here for the ride to hell with you, man. 110%. Let's go. Oscar De La Hoya, best promoter in MMA. I'm hyped.
Well, I mean, thing is, at least he won't be losing that much money promoting MMA, despite what he says he doesn't pay the fighter shit. So in one breath, you can't just ride against Dana White about not paying UFC fighters much, which granted, that's a valid complaint.
It's
UFC
true.
fighters are grossly underpaid.
Yes.
But you can't say that and then have a card that half of it is amateur fighters and the other half you paid 1,000 to show and 1,000 to win. No.
Opportunities, man. Creating opportunities.
Yeah, what a load of shit.
Chuck Liddell, man. Chuck Liddell.
Like he still doesn't know how to pronounce his name. He still doesn't know how to pronounce his name.
I think he does on purpose.
And quite frankly, he barely showed up for the damn fight. So as the post-fight press conference was going on, which I already told you how much of a shit show that was.
Cannot wait.
Yeah, he is in his limo or whatever, driving off, doing an Instagram video talking about the fight. Like, what? Get your ass over into this podium, man. Come get this work.
No, he didn't want that work.
He clearly didn't. He clearly didn't.
He doesn't. But the next main event for Golden Boy MMA 2 obviously can't be Tito Ortiz now because they'll combat this deal,
which you know what may not. I'm not quite sure that's going to happen now. Combate is apparently having trouble with their broadcasting home of DAZN. So their last card did not air on DAZN.
Yeah, but Campbell McLaren did come out and say that was just for one card. Yeah, but then again, promoter and talk. Who fucking knows?
Exactly. So until they're back on DAZN, until I see something official, sorry. I'm a bit skeptical. Now, you damn sure are not going to be able to afford Tito Ortiz if you don't have a broadcasting deal. And if you're Tito Ortiz, you're damn sure not going to do this unless it's televised because you're Tito.
On top of it, if you look at some of their like attendance figures for Combates Americas, it is
dismal. I'm sure
they can't be making money. Like Campbell McLaren just followed me on Twitter. Sorry, Campbell, but it's gonna be rough there for you guys. Let's just be honest about it. Somebody asked in the chat, I think it was 92 Aku. I forgot to put this up as an article in a topic, so to speak, but we should be talking about it. Daniel Cormier has come out and said that he wants to fight Stipe Miocic for a third fight. And I assume that you're in favor of this because it seems like everyone's sort of in favor of this matchup.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that. Yeah. I think we talked right after 241, and it was like, yeah, that's if he comes back, like if he doesn't retire, the third Stipe fight is the fight to make.
Yeah, you have to make that fight now.
Yeah, you have to because I think the stakes for that fight are higher than the third John Jones fight, and quite frankly, I don't think we have the appetite for a third John Jones fight after what we saw at 241. I think even at heavyweight, I don't think anybody's really into Jones having a third crack at him, considering that he beat him twice already. Even if you can dispute the results of those fights due to the drug testing issues. So I would like to I'd like to see him fight Stipe. I think the stakes in that will determine the greatest heavyweight in UFC history.
And combined with that, whether he wins or loses that Stipe fight really sets his legacy in stone, because the guy that lost to forgetting the wrestler's name in college and
Cael Sanderson,
and he lost to him basically every time in his college career. Lost to John Jones at the very top. He has had the clear Joe Frazier career of number 2. He's the number 2 guy in his generation. To then go up to heavyweight, to sort of change that legacy in a sense, right? To sort of be like, oh, maybe he was the best heavyweight of all time, but he wasn't fighting there because Kane was there, his best friend, but he was always the best heavyweight of all time. We just didn't know it. And then he loses to Stipe. And that narrative starts to shift just slightly. But if he were to lose a second Stipe fight, the narrative of, and his legacy of being number 2 will be 100% reaffirmed. And that is not necessarily legacy damaging because he's still the second best guy. He'd be the second best guy ever, right?
Yeah.
Heavyweight,
yeah.
Wrestling, like he'd be the second best guy ever. Like that's not a shame. But for him, I bet it must suck if that were to happen. Like
I'm sure it would suck. for him, and especially the way he thinks and how competitive he is and how much he's so internally driven. But I don't think even if he loses against Stipe, I don't think he becomes the de facto number 2 everywhere, because at least for that night after UFC 226, at that night he was number 1.
That's great. On that night, he was number 1.
And he defended that belt also.
But look, if you're talking about greatest heavyweights of all time, and Stipe wins this trilogy fight, there's no way you rank DC ahead of him.
No, when you talk about all time, then yes, Stipe
that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, well, I'm talking about
because
for him because no one is going to be all time great forever. Like, no one's going to be the number 1 all time great forever. There will always be somebody better that comes along, or at least other people that come up that we discuss, even if they haven't emerged yet.
True, true. But I think I think right now. So I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think right now it's clear that
don't do it.
I think it's clear that he is the second best light heavyweight of all time.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's clear.
And I think if he loses to Stipe, it would be clear he is the second best heavyweight of all time, not the best. So the legacy of second fiddle would be reaffirmed in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I'm still saying that for that night, for the moments that he was UFC heavyweight champion and successfully defended the belt, he that moment in time, he has to be number 1. So that might provide,
of course, no,
yeah, that might provide some internal comfort for him, I think.
I now understand where you were going with that thought process of, for Cormier's mindset, yes, 100% understand what you're saying there. I don't know though, man. DC seems like a guy that, man.
He's super competitive guy. He may not look at it with roses like I am.
20 years on the line when he's like an old man, Captain America sitting on the bench, thinking about being second fiddle for everything. There's no way he's gonna be happy about that. Like, just knowing DC and the competitor that is DC. But like I said, it's not like it's a bad thing. Like, I want to make that point very clear. It's not like we're saying this, or I'm saying this to make it sound like DC is some bum. No, it's the second best of all time in 2 divisions. Like, you know how hard it is to be
sports, even
in 2 sports. Yeah, you can make that argument. You know how hard it is to be like top 5 all time in your division, top 10 all time in your division.
Yeah,
and then to be the second best all time and to do that in 2 different divisions. That's very difficult to do. DC's legacy is still immensely impressive, even if it is just being the second best of all time in that way. But I do like the Stipe trilogy fight. I don't know if I made that point clear. I think it's a perfect fight. Makes all the sense in the world. And like you said, I far more want to see that fight than the Jones trilogy fight.
Mm-hmm.
The Jones trilogy fight doesn't do anything for me right now. It doesn't appeal for me in any way. But Stipe DC, that was a great heavyweight fight in the second fight, and one of those fights that had a huge momentum shift late. So, could we go back into a third fight and DC keep round 1 up and doesn't let up and actually finishes Stipe? I want to see that, because he was winning the fight. He was beating up Stipe till he got sort of hit to the body and tired out. But digressing, moving on, Wanderlei Silva, no longer under contract with Bellator, in talks with Bare Knuckle FC. I really have no thoughts on this other than it's sad. Like, Bare Knuckle FC and what it's doing to these old fighters is just like it's grotesque. It's grotesque to like a degree that I don't think we are accustomed to seeing in this sport in MMA. Like, maybe in boxing we see like this happen more often, like these really old guys get used and abused this way, but just the aesthetics of going from MMA, oh, you're an old guy, you should retire, you've been fighting getting knocked out for far too long, oh, now you're going to go fight bare knuckle. It's a different level of just, like you said, grotesque, disgusting. I'd have no inkling or care for this at all. Wanderlei Silva, please retire if you're listening to this.
Yeah, he was just talking about having CTE symptoms,
yes,
and Bellator was refusing to give him another fight.
Yep.
Like this, the idea that Scott Coker is refusing to give you another fight because of health concerns means you are pretty far down the damn road. This is the same guy who promoted Ken Shamrock versus Horace Gracie with a combined age of 101 years old. It's also the same man who promoted Kimbo Slice and Dada 5000. Oh, and by the way, a month after Kimbo Slice's death, he was scheduled to fight again, and he died of heart failure. That's not something that just sneaks up on you, you know. And that fight was scheduled for a place without any real commission oversight. So there are a lot of question marks around the sort of machinations of Bellator, and they refuse to give Vanderlei Silva a fight.
Yes, good
old Dave Feldman to the rescue. The same man who has Gabriel Gonzaga and Bigfoot Silva main eventing, and these are two of the worst chins in heavyweight history.
Didn't he want to sign
Alexander Emelianenko, who has hepatitis, who's also a convicted rapist? Yeah, that Alexander Emelianenko
and Chris Laban, who has been sharp one for 15 years already.
Yeah, and it has like a heart condition as well. So
disgusting.
Yeah, at this point, and you know, some of the behind the scenes stuff that I've heard about BKFC is even more disturbing. So
yeah,
nothing about this surprised me, but it doesn't disgust me any less.
Agree completely. For the sake of time, we're going to sort of run through these last two topics and get out of here. Gregor Gillespie versus Kevin Lee set for UFC 244 in New York. Kevin Lee going back down to 155. Thoughts on this fight, Anthony? Him obviously dropping back down to 155, and the matchup itself for Kevin Lee, who got a guy that I think we've both been a huge fan of. I think we've both been very high on, and has seemingly never been able to sort of get over that hump in the top 5. Thoughts on this matchup?
I like it a lot. I like it a whole lot. First off, I'm really anxious to see what Kevin Lee looks like as a product of TriStar. I think we've been on this show talking about this before. If not here, I know I've talked about it elsewhere. I think one thing that we don't pay enough attention to, or at least give enough acknowledgement to, is the death of Robert Fawless and how that's affected Kevin Lee's career. And since then, he's been kind of lost. He's been kind of wandering, and his coaching, and you know, he's had Dewey Cooper in his corner, but that Dewey Cooper, as good of a striking coach as he is not a Robert Fawless. He wasn't the guy to put all the pieces together and just know him as well, and knows how to motivate him, knew what to say to him to get him riled up and to get him to do work in the cage. So to have him under the tutelage of a Firas Zahabi, one of the most intelligent men from an X's and O's standpoint in mixed martial arts, is a big deal.
Yeah.
To have him training with GSP, with Tyron Woodley, with Rory McDonald, with OAM, I mean, with some of the standout guys at TriStar, is a big deal to a guy from a guy who was kind of running his own camp in some sort of haphazard fashion previously. Gregor Gillespie too needs a name. He needs a big test, and this is appropriate. This is very appropriate. And from a style standpoint, I can't wait to see the grappling exchanges in this fight. This is going to be nuts. I mean, that whole 244 card is completely insane. I just wish Canelo Kovalev was not going on the same night, because my brain is just going to explode that evening.
Way too much combat sports and way too much good combat sports that night. Last topic of the day: California State Athletic Commission. 8 athletes broke the weight gain rules at Bellator 228, including 5 of the Grand Prix fighters. And on top of that, to connect this news, on Spence Porter, obviously in the same city, also exceeded and broke the rule via the California State Athletic Commission. The 10% rule, where I believe if you exceed that percent, the next fight, they tell you to go up a weight class. If you exceed 15%, they can cancel your fight. And Andy Foster, the head of the California State Athletic Commission, has been championing this new rule. And your thoughts overall on this rule by the California State Athletic Commission, and the fact that it's clear that a lot of fighters at the top are cutting 10 to 15% of their weight, if not more, if you include 12 weeks out from fight camp, or fight night, I should say.
I like California enforcing these hydration rules and enforcing at least the idea of safe weight cuts.
Yes.
Weight cutting, in my opinion, is the biggest problem in combat sports, particularly MMA.
Yeah.
When you got a weight class every 3 pounds or so in boxing, weight cutting isn't as big of a deal because you have a lot more places where you can accommodate your ideal frame. But in MMA, it's not quite like that. So there are too many guys cutting a whole lot of weight and going out there with brains that aren't fully liquidated and getting their heads smashed in. Not a good day at the office. I actually, at the Bellator 228 weigh-ins, at the official weigh-ins, there was a little bit of an exchange between some commission officials and I believe Leandro Higo and his corner.
Yes,
I believe it was Leandro Higo. So what I saw was off the stage where the fighters were coming and stepping on the scale. The Higo's team, including, I want to say Glover Teixeira was right there. Glover Teixeira and Cal Magalhaes were there with him, and Captain Eric were over there. So I see the commission official sitting over there talking to them, and he's like raising his voice saying you don't know how to cut weight right, and and it's going to be a problem, and he's giving them some strong words, and he said, hey, I want to talk to you outside. And the commission official pulled I believe it was Higo aside and must have had some stern words with him out of my earshot. But California is very serious about this. Also, I know I bring this up quite frequently, but UFC 214, Renan Barão fought Aljamain Sterling at 140-pound catch weight because of his noted issues making weight. So I think California is onto something. This is something that other commissions should be paying attention to.
Yeah, and it's definitely progress in the right direction, obviously, and any amount of progress is the right amount of progress because at least it is some. It's the first step in a long list of steps that's needed to officially and fully curb weight cutting in all of combat sports. But it starts with one domino dropping, and California is a gigantic domino to drop in terms of commissions that oversight and regulate combat sports to actually try to innovate and be progressive when it comes to curbing weight cutting. So shout out to Andy Foster and the California State Athletic Commission. Now, Anthony, that's going to be it for today.
Okay, because I was definitely about to jump on something in the chat.
Oh, what was it?
Oh, Jay Protege?
Yep, Jay.
I think, yeah. So you're saying one championship is doing it right over any commission or organization right now. In theory.
Prove it.
We have no proof about this. They've started trying to stream some of their weigh-ins, and that's a great first step. But there's a lot of bullshit that is not being revealed. So until we see documentation, until we see the numbers on the scale, so we see a lot of things. I'm not taking them at their word.
Jay.
Also, keep in mind the first time they did this, there were several guys. I want to say 4 or 5 of them that failed their hydration test. They still fought. So
Jay, look, a promotion which has complete self-jurisdiction and regulation of themselves, obviously, is kind of not to be trusted unless there's a third-party oversight of some sort. Just point blank. Full stop. We don't even need to go on about how, in paper, in theory, their plan is great. No, it doesn't matter. They're the one oversighting that regulation of weight cutting and weigh-ins. Even their PD rules are self-regulated.
Yeah, despite them reporting that they had a connection to WADA, which was a lie.
It was a lie. They lied.
He lied. Worship him.
Yeah, one championship can shut the fuck up and sit down before they get their britches all big, thinking that they're actually doing something, because they're not. And I find it quite fishy, the amount of people inside the industry that have been trying to lay cover for one championship and telling the media, how dare us for questioning them. Alex Davis, a manager, fuck you. Anyways, guys, have a great day, great night, great evening, wherever you are. Find me, Matt Hunter, MCR, all platforms. Anthony, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at AntWalkerMMA. You can find my work on Sherdog.com and MMA on Point.
Hit the like button, share the show, subscribe, patreon.com/Mixed Combat Radio. Have a good one. Peace.